People of Earth, welcome to Adapter Parish, episode 88, The Day the Earth Stood Still. We'll get into it in a moment, but before our visitors land, let's talk about our next episode. In 2 weeks, we'll be looking at a classic children's book that's been adapted so many times, our episode is going to cover over 80 years and multiple continents. We'll be taking a close look at A Little Princess by Frances Hodgson Burnett. We're looking at a silent movie, a Shirley Temple vehicle, an anime series, and more. That's going to be in 2 weeks on Tuesday, April 6th. One more quick thing before we get started. We've had some drama going on over here at Adapter Parish headquarters, and we get into it a bit at the beginning of this episode. It has to do with our dog, so if anyone doesn't really want to hear a conversation about the scary things that can sometimes happen with a pet, I'd say skip 6 or 7 minutes into the episode and you'll be fine, and our dog is okay, by the way. If you have any comments, questions, or corrections about today's episode or any others that you'd like to hear on the show, remember to email adapterparishcast@gmail.com. If you enjoy the show, we'd love it if you would share that with the world by leaving a rating and review wherever you listen to podcasts. We're also on Patreon at patreon.com/adaptcast. We've got a patron-only community and our bi-weekly bonus show, Adapter Parish Plus, with episodes releasing every Tuesday between episodes of this show. We hope you check it out. Show notes from this and all other episodes can be found at adapterparishcast.com. And with that, on with the show, Adapter Parish, episode 88, The Day the Earth Stood Still. Hello and welcome to Adapter Parish, a podcast about adaptation. I'm Jeremy Latour.
And I'm Arielle Lipshaw, and today we are going to be talking about the day the Earth stood still.
This is our show's...
fateful day.
It's really our show's bread and butter, talking about, sci-fi from the 50s.
Yes.
That's what our audience is super, super into.
Yeah.
Not Jane Austen.
No, that's not popular.
Not Louisa May Alcott.
Not Robin Hood, not Sherlock Holmes.
No. The day the Earth stood still.
Surely not. This and RoboCop is our core audience.
This was an episode for me. I wanted to do this one. And that's how this works. I feel like the way our show works is the way we choose our episodes is, I would say, of every 4 episodes that you would grab, 2 are ones we think are important for us to do and would be ones that our audience would be interested in. 1 is for you and 1 is for me.
That's fair. Although I would only push back on that a little bit by saying I think the ones that are for me also tend to be the ones that I think our audience are going to be more interested in. Because I think our audience is like me.
That may be fair.
In general.
But I'm here too.
Yeah, I know.
And my name is on the front of the store as well.
Yeah.
So we're doing The Day the Earth Stood Still. Can we ask me how I'm doing?
How are you doing?
I've been better.
Yeah, we're like the walking wounded over here.
Yeah. So story time here at the beginning.
We had a traumatic incident in our personal lives that Jeremy would like to talk about.
Yeah, so this happened 2 weeks ago from when we were recording. Literally 2 weeks from the moment we're recording right now, I was having a very, very bad time. And I only bring it up, like, we talk about our lives on this show a lot, but I think only the good stuff. Like, we talk about our kid, who's amazing, and we talk about our dumb dog, who's really cute. And we talk about
Not anymore.
We talk about how much. Well, hang on. We talk about how much we love each other. That kind of stuff. We moved. Yay, we moved. We're in Studio B. Like the cute stuff like that. But we tend not to talk about the bad stuff. 2 weeks ago, Saturday night, I took our dog out for a walk. And while I was walking him, he was attacked by 2 loose pit bulls. I went very quickly from being annoyed that he wasn't pooping to, oh, this is the worst night of my life. And I had to fight off 2 pit bulls who were mauling my dog and screaming for help. And it was awful.
It was very dramatic.
Yep.
A very dramatic thing that happened on our street. Like all the neighbors came out, like the police was here, the fire, animal control, everybody was here.
Yep.
With us, and I had a baby that was supposed to be in bed.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I had a dog that was not supposed to be mauled by pit bulls.
Yes. And we had a dog that was very seriously injured, and you were minorly injured and had to go to the hospital.
I got bitten a few times. The thing that sucks is it wasn't the pit bulls that bit me. It was my dog that bit me while I was trying to pull him out of their jaws because he was so scared.
If he knew that
And, like,
he had
I'm-
bit you, he would feel very bad.
I feel like I'm describing this in a very kind of jaunty way. Like, saying that right now almost made me cry because
Yeah.
it was the worst. It was the worst moment of my life. It was terrible.
Yeah.
So it was a really bad night. He went to the animal ER and spent 3 nights there.
He had to have.
I went to the regular ER, and they stitched, they worked on my hands and everything like that because my hands got messed up. And he came home 3 days later, and where we stand now is we have a bit of a Franken dog, a bit of a Frankenweenie. He's got lots of his staples have come out.
It turns out when they sew up a dog or like staple up a dog, they don't take the care I think that they would with a person, like for many good reasons.
Yeah.
One of them being it does not matter, and his hair is going to grow back and no one will see it. But like,
So our poor 13-year-old grumpy dog
has been in a cone for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And he was in the hospital for 3 nights. It was really traumatic. We couldn't go and see him, partly because he was not in good shape and partly because of COVID.
Well, it's all because of COVID.
It was all because of COVID. So we had to go pick him up like at nighttime. Then it's just been like a lot. And also 1 week before it happened, I started my new job. So I went back to like my second Monday of my new job being, everyone's going like, how's your weekend? And I'm like, well, terrible. My dog is still in the hospital. Like it was really, it was really bad.
It was a very bad scene. And it was really weird to go from, if you had asked me earlier that day, what's the worst night of your life? I would have thought, I don't know. I got to think about that for a second. And it was really weird to end this experience like later that night after I'd been in the ER and everything was terrible. We didn't know if he was going to survive, to go like, oh, no, I know. This is the worst night of my life.
So that's, a bad thing that happened.
Yeah, and sorry if this is like triggering anybody. But this is us, and this is the thing. And the story's over. Like, that's the story.
Yeah.
We've told the story, and now we can move on to talking about, aliens coming to Earth and everything like that.
And the dog is fine and is going to be fine. The doctors at the animal hospital were very confident that he would be okay.
Yes.
And he is okay.
And here we are. Do you want to talk about aliens? I'd really like to change the subject. I wanted to talk about this, but I think we should change the subject.
Okay.
Let's
All
talk
right.
about aliens. Let's talk about the day the Earth stood still. Is that cool with you?
Yes.
So here's my guess. My guess is that if you were to make 2 circles and they represent the size of a population, like you could make a circle that says the population of Boston versus the population of New York. The New York circle would be much bigger than the Boston circle, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. I want to make one circle that is the population of the planet Earth that has seen the movie The Day the Earth Stood Still.
Okay.
And then I want to make another circle next to it of people who have read the short story from 1940 called Farewell to the Master by Harry Bates.
It's a smaller circle.
I want to guess, this is my assumption. My assumption is it is a much, much smaller circle.
Yeah.
And I'm going to assume that it is unlikely that many people who have seen the movie The Day the Earth Stood Still have read this story.
Yeah.
I bet a lot of people have. I bet people who love The Day the Earth Stood Still, upon finding out that it was based on a short story, sought out the short story to read it.
Mm-hmm.
But I am assuming a lot of people have not read it. So we're going to talk about that short story before we start talking about The Day the Earth Stood Still, the 1951 movie.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to kind of make clear where certainly I'm coming from in terms of my critique of it. Because I assume people haven't read it. Are you kind of in the same boat?
Yes. Prior to this, the only exposure I had to anything regarding The Day the Earth Stood Still was its mention in the song Science Fiction Double Feature in the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Well, because Michael Rennie was ill.
The Day the
Earth stood still.
Et cetera.
And he told us where we stand.
There you go.
Which made a lot more sense when we saw it.
Yeah. And Flash Gordon was there.
Flash Gordon was not there.
In silver underwear.
This song has been stuck in our heads for 2
Days.
weeks now. And it's a great song. I'm not mad about that, because it is great. So, this short story was called Farewell to the Master. It was first published in the October 1940 issue of Astounding Science Fiction. It was written by a man named Harry Bates, who I believe was also the editor of Astounding Science Fiction. And it took was it an hour-long short story?
Yeah.
It's not a short story. It's not like 3:10 to Yuma, where it took like 15 minutes to read. This is like a good short story.
It's like 40, 50 pages maybe.
And if you know The Day the Earth Stood Still, we're going to describe the plot and everything like that. It certainly, you could read it and go like, oh, it's The Day the Earth Stood Still. But then things are very, very different in it.
Yeah.
Do you want to go through the plot?
Yeah, I do.
Go
I think
for
we
it.
should. Okay. So it is the future. There's flying cars and shit.
Mm-hmm. And robots and stuff.
Robots. stuff like this. There have been 2 successful space missions, one of which was to Mars, and we're living in the future. The future from 1940. So probably in the author's head, like less the future than 2021. But anyway, quote unquote.
Because 2021 is not a year that exists to people in 1940.
Yeah,
What?
Yeah, it's the future. And flying cars, et cetera, et cetera. And there's this one guy. What's his name?
His name is Cliff Sutherland.
His name is Cliff Sutherland.
I'm just going to say it right now. He is not appearing in this film.
Yes.
Because he does not appear
in the film.
In the movie or the remake, and he is the main character of this story.
Yes. He is a newspaperman, a photographer. Right. He's a photographer, a freelance photographer for the newspapers. And one day in Washington, D.C., right on the mall, a spaceship appears. Very pointedly, it does not land. It appears out of nowhere as if it were traveling in a way that we could not possibly understand. And out of the spaceship comes the ambassador to Earth, Klaatu.
All right, and now I'm checking my notes because as I'm pretending to be someone who has seen The Day the Earth Stood Still, I'm like, okay, well, that sounds pretty familiar so far. Klaatu comes out of the ship. He is the alien. He looks like a person. And he says, hello.
Yeah.
Hello, hi, everybody. Now, I remember from the movie that a bad thing happens.
Immediately shot to death.
Shot to death? To
dies.
Death, you say?
He dies before the story begins. He is already dead. He has been dead and is entombed.
That's different than the movie.
It's different.
Because in the movie, he gets shot. Because Michael Rennie was ill the day the Earth stood still.
Not
because
dead.
He had been shot, but he got better.
But he got better. He's getting better.
But then he got shot again, and then it's a whole thing.
And so out of the spaceship comes another figure.
Gort. Gort, the robot.
I'm just going to call him Groot because I'm going to mess up. So I'm just going to lean into it. And here is Groot.
Well, it's Newt. So he's Gort in the movie.
Yeah.
He's Newt in this. G-N-U-T.
I'm going to call him Groot.
Just for our audience listening, every time you hear Groot, just know that it's because my co-host is not willing to put in the work. Is very
not respectful of other cultures' names.
Go on.
Okay. So out of the glowing green spaceship comes a big old robot made of the same material as far as anyone can tell. And
as the spaceship.
Yes.
Not as the man, Klaatu.
No. The spaceship and the robot are made of the same material.
Because the man was made of a material that was very shootable.
That was very shootable. He was organic in nature.
Turns out the ship and the robot are not shootable at all.
And he kneels down over his murdered master as we imagine him to be, and from that day forward never moves, never stirs. He is frozen,
and he bids farewell to the master in a short story called Farewell to the Master.
The end. Okay, so what they do is they're like, oh my god, we shot this. Because he comes out and he says, "Hi, I am Klaatu. I am the ambassador. This is my friend Groot." And then they shoot him. So that's the information that the Earth has about this person. And so everyone is very worried that some alien space force is going to come and take revenge on them for killing this guy. As well they should. So what they end up doing is they build out sort of a wing of the Smithsonian around the spaceship and Groot so that they can be safe, but also so that they can be studied. And they turn them into kind of a tourist attraction. So the way that this begins is the way that we the reader of the story learn about all of this is that Cliff goes to visit the tourist attraction and hears the 3-page narration retelling these events and how it all went down. So that's sort of where we begin.
Can I take it from here?
Yes, absolutely.
Here is the thing that happens. There is an inciting event because Cliff, our main character, is a photographer, and he takes a lot of pictures because he's a photographer. And he took a picture of Newt, and then he comes back later and he takes another picture of Newt, and he's developing the pictures, and he looks at them and he goes, "Holy fuck, Newt moved." That was the thing. Newt does not move. That is the thing we all know about this robot is that he does not move.
Yeah.
He moved. His foot is different. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to sneak into this museum at night, and I'm going to wait, and I'm going to see if he moves. And he does. He sneaks in. He's a whole thing. And he gets in, and Newt moves. Newt sees him and doesn't seem to want to hurt him or anything like that. And then a whole element of this story is introduced because he goes back over the course of a couple of different nights and he gets more photographic evidence that Newt is moving, and this is what's going to make him famous as a journalist.
There's
and
a
he's going to sell his story.
There's a situation with a gorilla.
Well, that's the thing.
Yeah.
So suddenly, like, he hears a gorilla, and a gorilla appears and fights with Newt, and the gorilla just dies.
That was
Like,
upsetting when the gorilla died.
and it doesn't appear like Newt killed him. It just appears like the gorilla dies. And then another night, the dude that he knows who read the whole intro at the museum,
Like the voiceover artist
that we heard at the beginning, was like a scientist or in the military or something like that. He was someone who was actually party to what was going on.
Sure, he just had a nice voice, so they had him read out the thing.
Suddenly, this dude comes running out of the spaceship, and Newt comes after him, and that guy dies.
He's like super confused, and he's like, I don't know what's going on. Please help me. I feel really weak. And then he just like collapses and dies.
And there's a whole thing. And there's also like a bird that comes out, and the bird just dies.
Yeah.
So there's this weird thing with gorillas and birds and this dude who did the voiceover. And at the same time, Cliff is talking to the military and the people who run the museum, and they all like, by the end of the story, these are the things that we find out, because it's a short story, so there's not much to it. But by the end of it, he goes onto the spaceship with Newt and finds out that what has been happening is that Newt has been using a technology that and also Newt carries him to the tomb where Klaatu is stored.
Yes, he's entombed.
Right. And one of the things that's at the at the tomb is a recording of Klaatu's voice, saying, "Greetings to everybody. Ow, I've been shot."
Yes.
That's the recording. And he takes the recording, and they go back to the spaceship. And it turns out one of the things that Newt has on his spaceship is a technology that allows him to recreate a being from a recording of what that being sounds like.
For a short time.
Well, no, the reason it's a short time is because the recording is imperfect.
Right.
And so therefore the copy is imperfect and dies.
Right. So an important thing to note is that one of the things about this guy, this voiceover guy that died, first of all, they found 2 copies of his dead body.
Yeah.
Second of all, he's alive and well outside in the world.
Right. These were copies.
Yes.
These were copies. And so like the gorilla and the bird, they were because Newt had like recordings of animals.
Yeah.
And this guy that died like twice, like there was because he did the recording at the museum, so Newt had access to that. And then Newt copies Klaatu because he has this recording now.
Yeah.
But then Klaatu dies.
Yes.
And Cliff basically says to Newt, well, wait a second. If the flaw is in the copy, if you had the original recording device, maybe you could study it to figure out exactly how it is flawed. In what ways is it flawed? Because if you could do that, you could reverse engineer it and make a better copy from the same recording, knowing what the flaws are.
Yeah.
Right? So he talks to the military, and they say, we'll give you the original recording device, and then Newt leaves. And at the very end of the story, right before Newt leaves, he says something like, we're very sorry about what happened to your master. And Newt looks at him and says something to the effect of, and I'm going to paraphrase lightly, says like, you don't understand, I am the master.
Yes.
And then the ship takes off and leaves.
So now we come to find out that the very, very, very sort of all-powerful, weird statue-like creature is the alien, and Klaatu was just his servant.
So I told you before we started recording, and I really want to hear your opinion on this short story as well.
Yes.
But I told you that my opinion on the short story had really crystallized in the like week or two since we read it. I would like to tell you now what my crystallized opinion of this short story is.
Okay.
It's pretty dumb. It's a dumb short story. I think it's actually not great.
Yeah, I mean, the premise I think is very interesting. A spaceship appears, the ambassador comes out, we shoot him immediately.
He's made of shootable material.
And then there's like a mysterious servant, so we think, and everyone's trying to figure out what the spaceship is made of and like what the robot is made of and all this stuff. Like that premise I think is interesting. The part where I think it falls flat is this stuff with like the voice, making a copy of someone from their voice, that comes out of nowhere and is very weird.
Yeah.
And what I think is supposed to be like an O. Henry style twist ending, it doesn't work really at all because it doesn't make you think differently about anything that happened previously. It's like, oh, okay, fine. Like,
yeah.
Other than like, I guess the stronger one is indeed the one that might be taking revenge on you for killing this guy, but like, okay.
Like
he seems okay at the end.
It's only surprising if, as you're reading it, you're like, there is no possible way that this amazing, invincible, incredibly intelligent robot is actually the leader of this expedition.
Yeah.
There's no way that this robot, who is incredibly, as I said, invincible and intelligent, like he's an invincible, intelligent giant robot, Like, it's not shocking that it turns out that he's the leader.
Yeah.
That's basically, I mean, you hit on my basic problem, which is that this story is trying to do way too many things.
Yeah.
This story is like, okay, it's not just a sci-fi story. It is a sci-fi story that does all the sci-fi things you can think of. Like, it is not just on Earth, it is in the future. How sci-fi is that? Oh, and then an alien lands. How sci-fi is that? He doesn't just land, he actually appears. It's a time traveler traveling through time and space. That's how he just appeared and didn't just land. How sci-fi is that? Oh, there's a giant robot. How sci-fi is that? Oh, he has a technology that allows him to rebuild someone from their recording. How sci-fi is that? Also, how stupid is that? Don't answer the first question first.
A lot.
Right? So, and then how sci-fi is it that, like, oh no, it turns out the robot is the master the whole time. What have I done to you? I've blown your mind. It is too many things to do in one short story.
Yeah.
This is like 3 short stories crammed into one.
Yeah.
And I think he could have written, you could write a very cool short story about a technology that can recreate people from their recording. You could create a really cool short story about aliens that appear on Earth and a giant robot. And you could create a cool short story about, I don't know, the other parts of it.
Yeah, and to the filmmaker's credit, especially of the earlier movie, that they sort of did the thing that I said, which is like, this is a very interesting premise. A spaceship lands on Earth, and an ambassador comes out, and we immediately shoot him. That is the only thing we are keeping.
And also, what do we find out from the short story about why they're there?
We don't.
We don't.
We don't.
We don't.
That was a trick question because I had to think about it for a second, but we do not.
There's nothing.
Yeah.
So, do you want to move on to the movie?
Let's move on to the movie.
Okay.
Let's bang through this.
In 1951, a movie was made about this. It was directed by Robert Wise. It was written by Edmund H. North. It was produced by a guy named Julian Blaustein. Now, here's the thing I found out, which makes absolute perfect sense. In 1951, Julian Blaustein wanted to make a sci-fi movie about the Cold War and the atomic age. He searched through like 200 sources to find a story that would allow him to make the movie he wanted to make.
High and low.
And he found Farewell to the Master and thought, this is a good starting point. Which makes perfect sense because the story is incidental. Like, Farewell to the Master has very little to do with The Day the Earth Stood Still.
Yeah.
It's part of it worked, but they made a ton of changes, which if anyone is listening to this that's seen The Day the Earth Stood Still, clearly they made a lot of changes to it. We're going to walk through what those changes are.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be interesting when we come back to like our quadrants and how they felt about the source material, because this might be one of the few exceptions where I'm going to say The Day the Earth Stood Still is the source material because the short story has so little to do with it, and they didn't make this movie because they loved the short story. They made the movie they wanted to make and used the pieces from the short story they wanted to. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Do you want to where do we start with this? Do you want to describe what's like different?
Okay. Well, spaceship lands.
That's already different.
It's still set in Washington D.C.
But it lands. It doesn't just appear.
Lands. Yeah, it doesn't
no
just
more
appear.
time travel. Now it's just
The guy comes out in a silver spacesuit. Someone kind of gets an itchy trigger finger and shoots him, but he lives. He's taken to the hospital.
We'll see. We all know that Klaatu dies at the beginning of Farewell to the Master. What this movie's script presupposes is,
what if he
didn't?
So he is he's okay, but they're sort of keeping him in the hospital, and he says, I have to talk to take me to your leader, essentially.
Take me to your leaders.
Your leaders. And they say to him, I forget who it is that's coming to talk to him, like one of the aides to the president or something
like that.
Chief of staff or something. Yeah. And he says, I'm more than happy to take you to our president. Like, he wants to talk to you. And the Klaatu, same name, Klaatu, is like, no, you don't understand. I have to talk to every leader of every nation at the same time. And the White House guy is like, that is literally impossible. And he's like, well, what about your United Nations? And and the guy's like, well, not every country's in the United Nations. And he's like, and like explains like,
hoisted by my own petard, I am.
Like, no one will
also shot.
No one will agree to this meeting because the Russians will only have it in Moscow, and the British will only have it in London, and like it's like it's a non-starter, complete non-starter. And he's like, okay, well, I'm gonna escape from this hospital, I guess.
I do appreciate how unfazed this dude is by the literal presence of an alien in front of him.
Yeah.
Like, he's not going to bullshit this alien. He's going to tell him, like, here's the deal. I've been doing this for a long time, and this is how it is.
It's not possible. You can talk to the president. So I kind of forget how the mom gets involved.
So
Can
the mom,
you remind me?
So, like, you're skipping ahead because basically the alien, Klaatu, he escapes from the hospital.
Yeah.
And, like...
Oh, it's a boarding house.
Exactly. He goes to a boarding house because he needs a place to stay. And so he goes to the boarding house and he's stolen a suit and he takes the name that's on the suit from like a cleaning service and says, "Hello, I am Mr. Such and Such from my suit." The name is actually important. We'll get back to that in a minute. Yeah. And at the boarding house, he meets like a bunch of
characters.
Just a bunch of placeholders for different types of characters. Like there's the person who's really paranoid and the person who's not really paranoid. And one of the people he meets at the boarding house is this woman named Helen Benson and her son Bobby Benson.
Yes, and she is a widow.
Yeah.
Her husband died in the war. We find out.
Mm-hmm.
And he kind of strikes up a relationship with her, and particularly with her son Bobby.
He strikes up a relationship with Bobby, and then her.
Yes, in sort of a, from a 2021 perspective, creepy grooming way.
She's like, I want to go out on a date with my boyfriend,
but
who is, by the way,
Hugh Marlowe from All About Eve.
All About Eve.
Yeah, so she's like, oh boy, like her boyfriend shows up to take her on a date and for like a picnic for the day, and she's like, oh, I can't, like, we got to take Bobby because like no one can watch him. I thought someone could watch him, but they can't. And Hugh Marlowe's like, well, I mean, like, clearly had wanted to do some smooching, I think, is the issue. It's like, no, your kid can't come with us.
I mean, I don't blame him. I would too. She's very pretty.
She's very pretty. I really liked her, actually, this character.
Helen's great. So this was an actress named Patricia Neal, who I don't want to. I don't want to talk about the way someone looks at the risk of like reducing them to just their physical appearance.
Yes.
But I will say this: she's beautiful in a way like I don't really see much. Like she looks like Patricia Neal.
Yeah.
She doesn't look like other actresses at the time. She looks like her.
Yeah, she's distinctive looking. She has kind of a distinctive voice, like kind of a husky voice. And also I found her very believable as like the mom of a 10-year-old boy. Do you know what I mean? Like she didn't seem like too young to be his mom, which I feel like is a casting problem like these days a lot. Like, so Klaatu is like, I can take the boy, and Hugh Marlowe's like, great, absolutely fantastic, strange grown man I've never met, absolutely take the boy.
And I feel like Helen's like, I don't know, no, it's fine.
No, it's fine.
Like she's convinced very quickly.
So they go out and they have a great day. Like they go to see Bobby's father's grave, and they get ice cream, and they go to the movies, and they go and see the alien ship because of course it's still sitting there. Oh, and Groot is there, like he's there.
Well, now he's Gort.
Groot.
It's so confusing for you to do this. Like, I would really appreciate it if you would try just from here on out to call him Gort, because that is the robot's name.
Okay.
It's not Groot, it is Gort. And let's just be clear. Gort, by the way, played by an actor named Locke Martin, who was an usher at Grauman's Chinese Theater. How tall do you think Locke Martin was?
Like 7 feet tall?
7'7".
Holy shit.
What a tall man. And reading the behind the scenes on this was very much like reading about Andre the Giant on Princess Bride, like famously in pain the entire time.
Yeah.
Like when Robin Wright jumps out of the window and he catches her, like that's fake.
Yeah.
Like she was on wires and stuff like that because he literally couldn't lift her. Locke Martin was the exact same thing, like in just a shitload of physical pain because his body was not supposed to be that big.
Yeah, bodies aren't supposed to be that big.
But he's supposed to carry her, and he's supposed to carry Klaatu at different times, and he's in a giant metal suit. I like that we're kind of holding off on whether we like this movie or not.
Yeah. We'll get to it.
We'll get to it.
Okay, so they go see the spaceship, and Klaatu says to Bobby, like, you know, who's like your best guy? Who's the leader? Because the president is clearly not. And Bobby's like, oh, this professor. My mom works for him.
Professor Barnhart.
Does
she work for him or she works next to him?
She's the secretary, like maybe... She might be like the secretary in the department. Like she doesn't work directly for him.
How sweet was it, by the way, when he was like defending his mom's profession?
Yeah.
And he was like, well, this guy is like the secretary, but he's not a real secretary, not like my mom.
Yeah, he's
like really
he's
sweet.
Saying like the Secretary of Defense is not a real secretary. My mom's a great secretary. It was cute. So they go to see Professor Barnhart.
Well, and he's not there.
He's not there, but his equation is there,
Mm-hmm.
and Klaatu fixes it for him.
Yeah, he's got a big blackboard, and he's like, "This is my calling card."
And his I don't know, housekeeper or someone comes in, and she's
she
like,
might have been his wife.
I don't think
know.
she's his wife. She seemed to have a business relationship with him.
Yeah. He seems like the kind of guy who would have a business relationship with his wife.
Yeah, no, I don't think I do not think she was his wife. I think she's his housekeeper or landlady. And she's like, "What are you doing? You have to leave." And she starts to erase the changes that he's made to this equation. And he's like, "I would not do that if I were you. He's gonna want to see me." And sure enough, that night, the FBI, it's not the FBI, it's the military shows up at the door and is like, "Professor Barnhart wants to see you." And they bring him to him, and he explains to Professor Barnhart who he is and what he's doing there and all this. And he's like, "Can you gather together?"
Well, can I just jump in for a second?
Yes, of course. I'm so sorry.
Barnhart immediately is like, "You're the alien, aren't you?" Because, by the way, at this entire time, the military have said to the entire populace of Washington, D.C. and the world, the alien is here. He has escaped. Keep an eye out for him. He's a tall man.
Yeah, they haven't broadcast a picture of him or anything. So he's basically hiding in plain sight.
But everyone's paranoid. And everyone is like, there is an alien walking among us.
Because they keep calling him the spaceman.
Yeah.
And the spaceman this, the spaceman that. Everything's the spaceman.
So Barnhart is clearly like, "You are the spaceman.
Yes.
You fixed my math. Thank you."
So Klaatu is like, "Can you bring together all the greatest scientists from your world? Because I have to tell you all something." And Professor Barnhart is like, "Well, they won't agree to come unless we can convince them in some way." And between them, they make this plan. Can we do something dramatic that won't hurt anyone, but will prove that you are the spaceman, and we need to all gather together and listen to you. So they hit on this plan.
Can we get everyone to just shut up for a second and listen?
Yeah. Yes.
That's the thing we need to do.
Yeah. So they want to do something dramatic that will affect everyone all over the world, but won't harm anyone. And basically what ends up happening, and this is so the day the Earth stood still is so close to the end of the movie and is actually not that vital to the plot. It could have been basically anything. So basically they put out essentially sort of a worldwide EMP type of thing, and it completely shuts down
electricity.
Electricity. And it was funny because when we were talking about it, when we were watching the movie, all the cars stopped going, and I was like, "Well, why would that?" Because I was thinking the grid, right? I was thinking the grid went down, and so I was like, "Well, why would the cars be stopped? That doesn't make sense." Oh, I see. They literally have removed the concept of electricity, and everything goes down. And I was like, "Whoa." With these jerks that, they're totally
You said
lying.
this to me. This was happening live. You were talking to me
and
while we were watching it.
I was like, but they're totally full of shit that it's not going to harm anyone because planes are going to fall out of the sky.
What about hospitals?
And what about hospitals? What about people in hospitals? And literally the next scene was all these dudes sitting around a conference table, and one of them was like, "Yeah, electricity all over the world with some exceptions, like planes in flight and hospitals." And I was like, well, clearly the filmmakers and I were thinking along the same lines.
Fuck me, I guess.
Yes, no one was harmed, but the Earth did stand still for
30 minutes.
30 minutes. Yeah, 30 minutes. Oh, because Klaatu got trapped in an elevator with the mom.
Yeah.
And he was like, "It's going to be 30 minutes, and then you'll understand."
I appreciated this as a subversion of the trapped in an elevator joke, because I feel like usually the way the trapped in the elevator thing goes is that leads to a relationship.
Yeah, no.
And that doesn't in this.
But it does lead to her. It sort of tangentially leads to her not being in a relationship with Hugh Marlowe because she finds out he's kind of a piece of shit and wants to turn the spaceman into the authorities.
And I said that Cliff Sutherland from the original short story was going to be not appearing in these films because he does not appear. And that still is true. But I will say, Cliff is really presented as an opportunist.
Mm-hmm.
Not a bad guy, but an opportunist.
Yeah, he's out for himself.
He's out for himself. He wants to get rich off the story. There's even a weird part in the short story where where he says to the military, "I'm going to help you out and I'm going to tell you stuff, but you got to let me make money off this story. I'm going to sell my story." And the military's like, "Yeah, oh, okay.
That's fine."
Which kind of felt unbelievable to me, but maybe it felt unbelievable to me coming from 2021.
It was a simpler time.
Yeah. So, but I feel like a lot of Cliff's rush for glory is in Tom Stevens, is in the boyfriend Tom Stevens. Because he really, he wants to protect people, but he wants to be famous as well. Like, he wants the money that will come from, like, knowing he knows who the alien is.
Yeah.
He knows that it's this dude that's in the boarding house where his girlfriend is staying.
Yes.
And by the time he finds out about it and is trying to tell people, she has also found out because she was trapped in an elevator with Klaatu, and he has explained the whole thing to her.
Yeah.
And she's there to tell him, don't do that. He's a good guy. This is good. He's doing his thing.
Yeah. And she like takes him on the run, like to try to get him back to the spaceship because the military is like a coming for him at this point.
Yeah. And they get him.
They get him. Yeah. So, okay. So what happens?
They shoot him dead.
He dies.
They shoot Klaatu dead.
Shoot him.
And as he's dying, he says to Helen, you got to go to Gort and you got to say this one line.
Yeah. It's not as he's dying. It's before that. When they're in the cab, he's like, if anything happens to me,
gotcha.
you go straight to Gort and you tell Gort this thing.
Yep. And this is like, to anyone who's listening to this who loves the movie, you're like, why haven't they mentioned this yet? Well, we're going to mention it right now because there's this classic line, which is Gort Klaatu Barada Nikto, which is the alien language, which was all created by Edmund H. North, who wrote the screenplay for it, which I thought was delightful. And we don't know what it means. He just says you need to say it.
Is there like a canon, like an accepted canon for what people think it means?
No, I found conflicting things.
Gotcha.
Like, it seems to be, I would say like one of the more accepted things seems to be Klaatu is hurt, go get him.
Yeah.
But some other people, I think, have said that it means like we need to tell the world what's going on. I don't know. Like, it doesn't really.
I mean, the name is literally just two words because one of them is Klaatu. His name.
Yeah. Something has happened to Klaatu.
Yeah.
So she goes to Klaatu. Now, she goes to Gort, rather.
Yeah.
And the other thing that has happened throughout this is Gort has just been in the one place, but, like, Gort's dangerous. Gort is very dangerous.
Yeah.
So, like, two guys come at him with guns, and he's like, no, I'm going to melt your faces off the fucking earth. And he melts them to death.
Yeah.
And one thing they did keep from the short story was, like, encasing Gort in, like, a plastic.
Yeah.
Like a giant plastic cube.
Like Han Solo in the whatever.
In carbonite.
Yeah.
In the whatever.
The whatever.
It's called carbonite.
All right.
And in the short story, Newt melts his way out of it. And in this movie, Gort melts his way out of it. Like, the same thing happens. And so he's very dangerous. And, like, he's presented as this very kind of dangerous character, but he's kind of ambiguous at this point. We almost want to say like chaotic neutral or something like that.
We're given to understand like chaotic neutral is good because we're given to understand by Klaatu that like if he gets a bee in his bonnet, like if Gort does, like he could destroy the whole world and no one could stop him.
Yeah.
Like even Klaatu may not be able to stop him, like sort of once he gets going.
Right. So he kills these two guys and then Helen runs in and he's walking towards her and he's about to kill her and she can't even speak the words. And then suddenly she says the immortal line, Gort Klaatu Barada Nikto. And he stops. And at this point, Klaatu is dead.
Yeah.
Because he has been shot by the military.
Again.
Again. This time on purpose. Like, it wasn't someone with an itchy trigger finger. This was like, you got to kill him, and we kill him. They shoot him a bunch, and he dies. And he's kept, like, not even in a morgue. He's in, like, a jail cell, which doesn't make any sense because he's dead.
Who can say?
And Gort finds him and melts through the wall and picks him up and carries him all the way back to the ship and apparently doesn't meet any interference along the way, even though he walks very, very slowly.
And he's big.
Gets him back to the ship. Helen is on the ship with him, and he puts him in a thing, and the thing brings Klaatu back to life.
For a short while.
And she's saying, wow, you have this amazing machine that has the power over life and death. And he says, well, it doesn't have complete power over life and death. Only the Almighty has that, which is a weird line.
Yeah, well, I guess they just had to throw in...
Well, I'll get to it.
All right,
I'll get back to it. And he says, I'm not going to be here for that long. I think I'm actually going to die again pretty soon.
I think I'm going to die now.
And they go back out to the outside of the ship, and all of the scientists have been assembled. They're all there. And there's like a great moment where they're like, you all got to go home. You all got to, military's telling you scientists go home. Nothing's going to happen.
Scientists go home.
And then suddenly the ship opens up, and out comes Klaatu.
And the scientists are like, we won't, thank you.
Out comes the alien, and the alien's robot. And a lady, who's just like
pieces out. She just like
fuck right
like she starts walking and she just keeps going until she's off screen.
I'm not part of this. I have nothing to say. I'm so sorry.
We both found that really charming.
It was super charming. And then Klaatu gives his speech, and this is like this is famous. And essentially, do you mind if I give the synopsis of his speech?
No.
He says, "We are here because you, the human race, you have discovered nuclear war." And this is, 6 years after Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Yep.
We also know that you're working on space travel. I represent many other planets in the universe, and we are worried about you.
We're here to tell you, knock that shit out.
Knock that shit right the fuck out right now. Because you need to be peaceful, and we don't want you bringing your atomic bombs into the universe. And the thing that I really loved about it, just from a writing standpoint, is like it's not a threat because he's not threatening them.
Yeah.
He's telling them about a threat.
Yeah.
Because essentially, he is from a group of planets and civilizations that have all worked together and have all said, we couldn't be peaceful. We couldn't be peaceful, so we needed to create something that would make us peaceful. So what we did is we created this race of robot policemen.
Yes.
Gort is one of them.
Hello.
And he will basically kill you if you're going to do anything violent.
Yeah. So like even like the tiniest hint of violence, you are like gone.
He literally says the Earth will be a burned out cinder.
Yeah, and it is very reminiscent of that Star Trek episode where Wesley gets sentenced to death for walking on the grass. Like they visit this society that like the everything is perfect and amazing because the punishment for even the tiniest infraction is death.
That's not real. What you're describing isn't real.
What?
It's just that's not an episode of TNG, I'm pretty sure. I mean, also, full disclosure, I have blocked everything that happens in the first 2 seasons of TNG because it's not very good.
Oh my god. Okay, it's season 1 TNG.
Well, there you go.
And so
I remember the episode.
That's what it reminds. Yeah, don't gaslight me. That's what it I know that episode very well. That's what it reminded me of. It's like we have created this extreme overreaction to any hint, the slightest hint of violence. This big robot will come and murder you.
So he's basically saying, like, I'm not threatening you.
Gort
but like
is.
Gort is behind me and
I
he doesn't fuck around.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. Like we purposely made them uncontrollable. Like we can't control them. Like they're just gonna do what they're gonna do.
Mm-hmm. And then upon giving his message, he fucks off back to space.
Yes.
And that is the end of the movie.
Yes.
And it is quite an ending.
Yes.
I feel like we should get into what we thought about it and how let's talk about it and let's analyze it and let's do all that kind of stuff. But I feel like it might sound like we've been kind of dunking on it quite a bit as we've been talking about it.
You know.
What was how did you like this movie?
Yeah, it was wicked fun.
It was super fun. This movie's great.
It was so much fun. Like it was ridiculous. Like it was campy sci-fi, but it was super fun to watch. Like, did it succeed in its goal, which was to be a campy sci-fi movie? Yeah, absolutely.
Did it make it like did it succeed in its goal in making you think about the Cold War and paranoia and like the potential dangers of how we could fucking kill each other with atomic weapons?
I did not think much about the Cold War. I have to admit, I really was more I did not watch this movie with a great sense of the allegory involved. I was just thinking about aliens.
I was thinking about that stuff a lot. Like that, especially the whole thing about like there's an alien among us, like that kind of thing. What is it called? Is it fellow traveler? Is that the concept?
I have no idea.
Hang on. All right, so fellow traveler. I've very quickly looked up the definition right now. It's basically, here's the boilerplate. The term fellow traveler identifies a person who's intellectually sympathetic to the ideology of a political organization and who cooperates in the organization's politics without being a formal member of that organization. In U.S. politics during the 1940s and the 1950s, the term fellow traveler was a pejorative term for a person who was philosophically sympathetic to communism, yet was not a formal card-carrying member of the Communist Party. So it was like, it was all about paranoia.
Okay.
It was like your neighbor might be a fellow traveler.
Okay.
They'll get you because they're not technically a member of the Communist Party, but don't let that fool you. They still are completely. The idea that there is an alien walking among us who represents this other civilization, but he looks just like everybody else.
Yeah.
Like that to me is one of the hallmarks of Cold War paranoia.
Yeah.
And like specifically art and movies about Cold War paranoia.
Yeah.
So that really rang true to me. I like that part of it. But then the atomic age part, like, of course, it's all about nuclear weapons and it's all about how we're dangerous and killing each other and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I loved that part of it. I thought it was great.
I just didn't really think about it at the time. I was concentrating on the aliens.
Yeah. And the
robots.
So what are some things that work in this movie? Like, I think the metaphor works.
Yeah. Yes.
What about the characters?
I mean, the characters are all like great and serve their purpose. Like they're all kind of like, they're not super three-dimensional, but that's okay.
They're archetypes, but that's okay.
That's okay. Like the kid is great. Like we really loved. I think we fell in love with this kid because he was so natural.
I love the scene where he's feeling like his mom and her boyfriend are gaslighting him.
Yeah.
Because he says, "No, I went to the spaceship." Mr. Carpenter, who is just this guy's name, the name that Klaatu gives everybody, like, I went to the spaceship And I saw him, and he's the alien, and they're like, "No, you're not. That's crazy." And he's like, "No, I'm not. It's real."
And and it like broke my heart because he looked at his mom. His mom was like, "You were dreaming, and you didn't leave the house and go to see the spaceship." And he's like, "I did." And she's like, "You didn't. It was a dream." And he looks at her like with tears in his eyes and goes, "I would never call you a liar."
Yeah.
Like even though he's so mad at his mom, he still loves her so much, and it was so upsetting. You'll understand someday.
But that was really good. I thought the design of everything is so like, what's the word I'm looking for? So inevitable for sci-fi.
Yeah,
like
the silver suit.
Do you know who the production designers collaborated with to design the alien ship, both the exterior and the interior? I'm given to understand based on what I've read.
Who?
Frank Lloyd Wright.
I mean, why not?
Why the fuck not?
Why the hell not?
It's just to me, this is the Aliens Invade Earth movie.
Yeah.
Like, there's lots of them, but there's a reason why this one is held in such high regard and is held up like above all the other ones out there.
Yeah.
It's just this. It's a really perfect movie.
That's great.
It's so good. Couple things I wanted to mention really quickly. So I mentioned it before. It was directed by Robert Wise. I wanted to talk about him a little bit more. This is not a hack. This is not someone who just showed up with this movie. This is someone. Here are some other movies that Robert Wise directed. Some you might have heard of: Star Trek: The Motion Picture, The Andromeda Strain. These are two smaller movies. I don't know if you know these: West Side Story and The Sound of Music.
I was going to say, didn't he do The Sound of Music? I'm pretty sure he did. Yeah,
he sure did. But he had to start editing. Here's two movies that he edited. Maybe he learned a thing or two about filmmaking while he was editing Citizen Kane and The Magnificent Ambersons.
Oh my God.
Like, this guy's been around. One of the things I've always loved about Robert Wise, and this is a bit of an aside, but he directed Star Trek: The Motion Picture, which like isn't great, and I don't love it. You still have never even seen it, right?
No, I haven't, and I'll tell you why. Because I proposed to you a while back that we spend like the pandemic, because we were like, I wasn't employed at the time, and I was like, I want a project. Let's watch all the Star Trek movies. And it died because you were like, I'm not watching Star Trek: The Motion Picture, and I'm like, well, I'm not doing this project without starting from the beginning.
I didn't mean that I'd never watch it ever. I just meant in the moment I didn't want to,
That's
and
fair.
we did other stuff, and it was fine.
It's fair.
But Star Trek: The Motion Picture is not great. And one of the reasons why it's not great is because Robert Wise really wanted to do like 2001, A Space Odyssey. And so the movie is full of these really, really slow, methodical, ideally balletic, but not really, shots of the Enterprise going through space and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And like famously, years later, he did a director's cut. And this is one of my favorite things in a director's cut. I love when a director's cut is shorter than the theatrical cut.
There you go.
Because that shows me that the director really gives a shit about it, because they're not just like, no, I'm not just going to add scenes I was forced to cut. You know what? I didn't do a great job the first time, and I'm going to do a better job the second time.
That's pretty
So
funny.
he cut a lot of that shit down for the director's cut. So I'd watch the director's cut with you. And it's weird for me that like I don't love the first one, because like, what is my favorite movie of all time?
Star Trek 2.
Star Trek 2: The Wrath of Khan. It's the greatest movie ever made. I love it so much. So that's Robert Wise. But I want to talk about Edmund H. North for a second and the writing of this movie, because throughout the movie, I'm kind of thinking, oh, that's an interesting choice. I see what they're doing. Are they No, they are doing it. Let me ask you this. I mentioned it before. What is the name that Klaatu chooses for himself here on Earth?
Isn't it like Mr. Carpenter?
Yeah, Carpenter. Cool. What happens to Klaatu like at the beginning of the third act?
Oh, is he Jesus?
He's space Jesus.
Jesus.
He gets killed. He
God
comes to Earth to save us, to deliver this message. He takes the name Carpenter. He is killed, and then he is brought back to life.
3 days later.
Well, a period of time later. Let's call it 3 hours, 30 minutes maybe. No, he's Space Jesus. And Edmund H. North did that very intentionally. And from what I gather, he didn't do it because because he thought, oh, people need Jesus in these movies right now. He was just like, this is going to inform my writing, and I think it's interesting.
You all science fiction fans need some Jesus.
Yeah, I don't think he was coming from that perspective. He just wanted to do it. And it doesn't sound like he made it like super good. It doesn't sound like Robert Wise was in on it and said, I want to make a movie about space Jesus.
Yeah.
But the writer did say that. And here's the thing. I went on at length about this in our bonus show, and just quick plug for Adapter Parish Plus. You can find us on Patreon. I went on at length about how I resent the fact that a lot of people consider Superman to be Space Jesus, because
Space Moses. he's Space Moses.
He's not. He's Superman. But if you were going to make a case for him to be biblical in any capacity, he's Space Moses. He's not Space Jesus.
I mean, like the number one argument for Superman not being Space Jesus is that he was invented by Jewish people.
Right. Like, that's a big thing. Like, the fact that he's Jesus, that came like years and years later in the movie, with Christopher Reeve.
Yeah.
But this is one where Klaatu in the original short story Farewell to the Master, he's nothing. He just says, "Hi, I'm dead." That's it.
Yeah.
In this movie, though, they made the decision, we're going to make him Space Jesus.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm okay with it. Do you know one of the reasons why I'm okay with it?
Why?
Because he's delivering what is basically a ridiculously fascist message to the entire planet Earth.
Yeah.
Would you like to move on to how fucked up it is that Gort's going to kill everybody if they don't fucking straighten up and fly right?
Yeah, I mean, yes, that is super fucked up. And not to move on too quickly if you had more to say to the next movie, but like that's even more prominent in the more recent The Day the Earth Stood Still. The way that the Earth is like in severe danger from Gort right now.
It's a little bit. I'm almost going to say it's less fascistic in the second one, in the remake, than it is in the first one. Because the first one is, you need to be a certain way because we have deemed that the way to be. Which is like, we have defined what peaceful looks like.
Sure.
And we've created these race of robots that will kill you if you don't adhere to that definition of peaceful. Whereas, like, we'll talk about it more when we get to the second one, but it's all about environmentalism.
Right,
it's
right.
We are actively killing the planet, and for the survival of Earth, we're going to be killed.
Yeah.
It's a totally different message.
Yeah.
But in this one feels more fascistic to me.
Yeah.
It just really does. And that's one of the things I love about it, because the message that I got from this movie wasn't, we are trying to convince you, the audience, of this. It's, we're presenting a thing saying, hey, what if aliens came to Earth and told us we needed to stop killing each other or we were going to get killed?
We would not listen.
That's good sci-fi. That's the shit you do in good sci-fi, is you pose a what if and then you allow people to think about it to its logical conclusion.
So were you saying that like the writer had drawn this parallel, but like you didn't think that Robert Wise was like
just the Jesus thing?
Not
the fascism part.
No, the Jesus part. Like, but you didn't think that like Robert Wise was like sort of wise to it.
Not that he didn't know about it, but that it wasn't like. I think he was trying to make a good movie.
Yeah.
And I think it's the kind of thing where you could easily make a good movie from just a basic character and plot perspective and not really care about that aspect of it, even if you were aware of it.
One of my favorite things, this is a sidebar, but one of my favorite things in like stories about movie making is like when someone says, this person was operating under this assumption and this person was operating under a totally different assumption, and that's how this like wonderful movie came to be.
I hope you're going to give an example.
Yes, I am going to give an example. So apparently this was an anecdote from the movie The Celluloid Closet, which is a great documentary about the history of LGBT people in cinema. So apparently the director of Ben-Hur, so like there's this really homoerotic relationship between Ben-Hur, who's played by Charlton Heston, and Masala, who's like his best friend from childhood. And apparently the director like took the actor playing Masala aside and said, so just so you know, like, you're in love with him. Like, just play that you are sexually attracted to him and you are in love with him. And that's what the actor did. And nobody told Charlton Heston because they didn't think he would like that. So Charlton Heston is playing it like as bros, and the other guy is playing it like as lovers. And I've never even seen Ben-Hur, but I'm so excited to watch it one day because having this knowledge, I think it's going to make it just all the more wonderful for me. All right. So Day the Earth Stood Still, fascism. You have more?
I have just a tiny bit,
okay,
and then we can move on. I just want to reiterate how much I love this as just a simple story being told. I like that the idea is it's trying to make you think about paranoia and the danger of atomic weapons, but it's not saying we the filmmakers think the way to fix the world is this story. We don't think this is the way to do it. They're not necessarily saying it is or it isn't. They're just presenting a story. at least I didn't get the impression that the filmmakers are saying, wouldn't it be great if there was a race of super robots that would kill us if we tried to kill each other?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get that from the movie. I just got them saying, what if we weren't careful and it turned out that something like this would happen? We'd all be fucking dead if we weren't able to get with the program.
Yeah.
And that, to me, as I said, that's good sci-fi. And I think that's one of the reasons why this has such staying power. And it's one of the reasons why I love the Space Jesus stuff, because it just, to me, it undermines the idea of like trying to give me Jesus in a story like this.
Yeah.
Like, no, Jesus clearly informed the character. It's there on its face, but he's basically there delivering this utterly fascistic message, which is totally anti-Jesus. And I kind of love it.
Yeah. I think we're on record as not liking a Jesus message in a movie.
But I'm not always for it, but I'm not against it.
That's fair.
You know?
That's
like fair. I'm totally fine with it in this. This movie is great. And we really enjoyed it.
We really enjoyed it.
So then in
2008,
57 years go by.
Jeez, or Pete's. That's a lot of years.
Apparently, kind of leading up to this, one of the reasons this movie happened is because in the 90s, there was a producer who worked with Keanu Reeves on Speed and also wanted to remake The Day the Earth Stood Still. So it was gestating for a really long time. Finally, in 2008, this movie is remade as The Day the Earth Stood Still, starring Keanu Reeves as Klaatu. It was directed by Scott Derrickson, who did a lot of horror. He did The Exorcism of Emily Rose. He did Sinister. He did Deliver Us from Evil. There's a movie he directed that you have seen. He did Doctor Strange.
There it is.
For Marvel.
I have seen that.
I thought he did a good job with it. So he directed this movie. It was written by David Scarpa. And it's, as I said, it stars Keanu Reeves as Klaatu. And some changes are made. Helen Benson is the female lead, but now she is Dr. Helen Benson.
Yes.
A doctor of astrobiology, played by Jennifer Connelly.
Yes.
Who is my all-time #1 movie crush. I don't know why that was important for me to add.
I don't know either.
She's super pretty, and I like Jennifer Connelly a lot.
She's great in this. She's great in this.
She was really good in this.
Okay, so watching this movie was a very weird experience for me because I hate this kind of movie. I hate this kind of movie. I hate like a modern sci-fi movie. I hate a big splashy movie. I hate almost any like movie from the last, 20 years that had a big budget or seemed to. I hate this kind of movie. I did not hate this movie.
I didn't hate this movie either.
At all. I didn't hate it. I literally wrote down at one point, oh, well, this is where it gets bad. It never really got bad. It was bad. Like it wasn't a great film.
It wasn't great.
Yes.
Like I think we can go on record as saying it wasn't great, but like it wasn't bad.
But I enjoyed watching it, which just was weird because not only did I not expect to enjoy watching it, I don't know that I could point you to anything that I was like, well, this was great and I loved it. I just didn't hate it, and I thought I would hate it.
Let's talk about this plot for a second. So it does start in the same way, which is that there's an alien ship that is rocketing towards Earth.
Yep.
And scientists know about it.
They know about it. And then they gather all the scientists sort of against their will to try to help figure out what's going on because they think that this spaceship is going to crash into Manhattan.
They don't know it's a spaceship. They just know it's a thing traveling towards us, and it's going to kill us all. But then it slows down.
It slows down because it's not crashing. It's landing.
Yeah.
Lands in Central Park.
Mm-hmm.
We're now in New York, not D.C.
Which we were kind of against at first.
Yeah.
Because I think both of us really liked that it was Washington, D.C. in the original.
Yeah, for whatever reason.
But then I think the important point was raised that like the UN is in New York.
Yeah.
Which, okay.
Yeah, it's like right down the street.
That makes sense to me.
Okay.
That makes sense. So Helen Benson is one of those scientists who's called.
And she basically has been like forcibly abducted by the government from her home to try to go and solve this problem with a bunch of other scientists, including John Hamm, who's like her former coworker.
Hang on. John Hamm, by the way, who's just now starting to blow up because Mad Men is the new thing, and everyone knows about this John Hamm.
The cast of this movie is pretty good.
It's pretty good. I want to go back for a second.
Okay.
Because we skipped the entire beginning of this movie.
Right.
It has a prologue.
Yes.
The prologue is in like 1928 or something like that.
Yeah.
In the frozen north or south. I can't remember if it was the Arctic or the Antarctic.
The tundra?
Doesn't matter. It's one of those things where like it's very cold and polar bears and penguins could easily show up at any moment.
Okay.
But there's this guy in a tent who like climbs up a ridge and looks at this giant glowing orb and he touches it and then suddenly he gets knocked out And when he wakes up, the orb is gone, but he looks, and it looks like something has happened to his hand, like a sample has been taken from his hand.
Ooh.
This man is Keanu Reeves. Keanu Reeves with a beard. And then the movie starts.
Yes.
Then we get the whole thing with the scientists, and then the orb lands, and Jennifer Connelly's with all the scientists, and they walk up to it, and out comes this like 7-foot tall, weird looking, gross kind of alien thing.
Yeah.
And it gets shot.
It gets shot.
He gets shot immediately. And right in front of Jennifer Connelly, she's like splattered with blood. It's very violent.
And her whole thing is she's like an astrobiologist.
Yeah.
So she's like at the forefront. All these scientists have all these different fields, but she's the one who's like, what is this life form?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what she's there for. So she's like, medic, and they like take him away to try to save his life. And all the gross slimy stuff falls off of him, and it turns out he's Keanu Reeves.
It's basically placenta.
Yeah.
At this point. And there's like a little growing Keanu Reeves who becomes a full-grown Keanu Reeves.
Yes.
So yeah, basically what they're saying is the reason that she is privy to all of like the operations and everything like that and actually has access is because her field is relevant.
Yes.
She is an astrobiologist. A lot of the other scientists are not part of it because their field was not relevant.
Yes.
Because now it is a life form that they are dealing with. But they go, wait a second, this is human. This is human. His DNA is completely human. And it turns out what they've done is rather than sending, they have basically taken one of their people and they have reconfigured him and put him in the body of a human to better communicate with us, the humans.
Yes. Can we go back to Dr. Helen Benson for a second? Because I just want to talk about her home life for a minute.
I mean, we have to.
Yeah. So there is a little boy in this one. You said to me that there was like a consensus on the internet that Jaden Smith was the worst part of this movie.
That was what I read. When I read this, I was reading so many like reviews and like user reviews and just, critics. And it seemed like there was a consensus that Jaden Smith was the worst part of this movie.
And I feel like that is a very unfair perspective. First of all, he's a baby in this movie. A baby. Like when you said Jaden Smith, I guess I was picturing like current Jaden Smith and going like, oh yeah, I could see how people would like not like him.
Super easy to dunk on current Jaden Smith.
But like he's a baby. He's so cute. I mean, as anyone who's listened to our Karate Kid episode knows, like apparently I have a soft spot in my heart for Jaden Smith, and I think he's a really good child actor. Like I think his performance is very good.
Yeah.
So her whole thing, Jennifer Connelly, Dr. Helen Benson, is that Jaden Smith is actually her stepson, but her husband died. Like both his biological parents are actually dead. So she's kind of stuck with him, but she loves him. Like she loves this kid. But he is kind of a little shit to her sometimes a bit. Even though I think in his heart he loves her really, because like he's going through something. Like his dad married this woman and then like immediately died.
I would just add a level to this. Like I do believe that she loves him and feels a responsibility towards him, but she also doesn't get him at all and doesn't know how to be a parent.
Yeah, she doesn't know how to be a parent because she's only been a parent for like a year. You know, like she married his dad, I think she said like 3 years ago, and he died a year ago.
Yeah.
So
I would say she probably has been a parent for 3 to 5 years.
Sure. But his dad was in the picture,
right?
Is what I'm saying. You know, to be like the main parent.
But her son Jacob is there.
He is
present in the story.
He's present in the story, and like there was definitely this like you'll understand someday moment. I don't know. I guess I've gotten really soft-hearted about like moms and like little boys, for some reason because like. There was this moment where the army like came to take her away to the base to deal with the situation, and she was like, I can't go, I have a child here. And they're like, I don't know what to tell you, like you're coming with us. And she's like, okay. And the neighbor comes and like, is everything okay? And she's like, okay, you're gonna go stay with the neighbor. And I turned to you and I was like, I would never have left him. Either he's coming with me or I'm staying here, but I would never leave him. So anyway, that's her situation. She's got this son, the stepson that she's sort of doing her best to take care of.
Mm-hmm. So essentially, she meets Klaatu. He is weird and Keanu Reeves and has very little affect, but he's like telling these people, hey, I got to talk to the leaders of the world.
Yeah, all of them.
Yeah. By the way, he's not the only person that exited the ship. Well, he really was, because the other thing that exits is a 28-foot tall fucking robot.
Yeah, Gort.
That is Gort. And he's very scary and very big. And we don't really know much about him yet.
Yeah,
but
we'll come back to him.
If you know anything about the story, you know that he's not
very dangerous.
He's not great. So he escapes with Helen's help.
Klaatu escapes.
Yeah, Klaatu escapes.
Yeah.
And they meet back up again.
Because they're going to like dissect him or something. Like, they're going to do something real bad to him.
Right. So they're on the run at this point, and they still need to do the thing where basically the plot changes from the original in that Klaatu's goal is not, as in the original, to gather all of the leaders of the world to tell them what they need to do. That's not his goal anymore. His goal now is to stop Gort.
Yes.
Because Gort gets activated.
Yeah.
In the original, Gort's just like a robot with a laser beam who goes around shooting people with his laser beam, which is, dangerous, but it's not like viscerally terrifying.
Yeah.
Let me pose this. Is it a little more viscerally terrifying that Gort in this version changes into like little nano bugs?
Yeah, he's like a plague of insects.
Eat you alive until you don't exist anymore.
Well, and the reason that this happens is because like the army, including what's his name, Kyle Chandler?
Yeah, Coach.
Coach Friday Night Lights is Coach Taylor.
Coach Taylor. Okay,
Coach Taylor,
gotcha.
yeah.
With clear head, full heart. Can't lose. I
Clear
don't know.
eyes,
I don't
clear
actually
eyes, full
know.
heart, can't lose. I have actually seen Friday Night Lights.
Never seen one episode.
Okay. They're trying to basically like take him apart and see what makes him tick, and they like set him on fire, like, and he does not like it, and he kills the guy that's in there with him, and he basically like disintegrates into a swarm, like that's that, and they all die.
Yeah.
And so he's like basically become a swarm, and he's like swarming around the world, and Klaatu's like, I do not know if I can stop him at this point. But he is able to save Jaden Smith from swarm death.
Well, that's at the very, very end.
At the very, very end.
Well, he makes the decision, because the other thing that's happening during this entire time is that like the orb he landed in, turns out there's a ton of these orbs all around the world.
Yeah.
And what they figure out is all of these orbs are actually taking specimens of animals from the planet Earth to repopulate.
Yeah, it's like an arc.
Because what they're going to do is they're going to wipe humans off the face of the Earth.
Right.
Because we're destroying the planet.
It's an arc. It's, again, biblical.
Yeah.
It's an arc sitch. It's more Old Testament than New Testament.
A little bit.
Yeah. And then Kathy Bates, Secretary of Defense.
Well, yes. So she's the Secretary of
I was
Defense.
like, what the fuck is this character doing in this movie?
We'll talk about her in a second.
Yeah.
But she's present the entire time.
She's like sort of the villain, but not really the villain. Like, she's kind of the villain, but she's just kind of doing her job as best she can.
I don't know that the movie would be any different if she wasn't in it.
Yeah, that may be true.
Not Kathy Bates, the character.
The character. I mean, Kathy Bates is great.
Yeah.
She showed up for her paycheck. She was just there so she wouldn't get fined.
So basically, the whole thing in this movie is that Klaatu's thing is, I need to figure out whether the human race is worth saving or not. Because if I think they're not, I'm just going to let Gort do his thing.
Yeah.
Because he's doing his thing already, and the decision has already pretty much been made. He even meets with a guy at one point. I think, is it James Hong? Is that his name?
Yeah.
He meets with a guy who's actually one of the aliens who's been there for like 70 years.
Right.
And says like, hey, you're one of our people. What do you think we should do? And the guy's like, I mean,
I'm happy.
I love it here. I'm not going. I understand what you need to do, but I'm not going anywhere because this life is great.
Because he's got like children and grandchildren and like a family.
So at the end of the movie, basically, he has been traveling now with Helen Benson and her son Jacob, and they basically represent humanity to him.
Yeah.
And he sees that they have a terrible relationship, and then at the end of the movie, he sees that they reconcile, and he goes, maybe humans can change.
Yeah. And he gets to meet John Cleese.
Yeah, he gets to meet John Cleese, which is, I mean,
as anyone would enjoy.
A thrill for anyone. Yeah. He's like quoting Monty Python to him. Yeah. It's a whole thing.
He's literally the smallest role. Again, like, just showed up for a paycheck, John Cleese.
That's the whole thing. Like, Klaatu's favorite is clearly Meaning of Life, which is like not everyone's favorite.
Yeah.
I would say most people would say Life of Brian or Holy Grail.
Mine is Life of Brian, for sure.
I mean, mine is Holy Grail.
No, I know that.
But no one's is Meaning of Life.
No.
Klaatu, though, it's Meaning of Life. None of that happens. So
what is this run we're on?
It's a thing. So John Cleese plays Professor Barnhart.
Yeah, who's in it for, again, 10 seconds.
They do the whole blackboard gag, too, where he's
fine.
changing it, and he comes in, and he's there for shot for a day or two.
Yeah.
Maybe 2 days.
And then I got mad that like she didn't leave the kid with Professor Barnhart when they had to run, like completely invalidating what I said earlier about like I would never leave him. I would never leave him.
But if she did leave him and she didn't take him, then they never would have reconciled.
Well, because he was the one that called the cops on Klaatu in the first place. He was being kind of a shit. I think that the reviews you read were responding more to the fact that the character is a shithead than Jaden Smith, because Jaden Smith's performance performance is great.
Yeah.
Like, it's really, he does a great job.
Well, people traditionally have a really hard time separating the character from the actor.
Yeah.
Like, people are assholes.
I have never, like, listen to our Karate Kid episode. I've rarely seen a chemistry like that between Jaden Smith and Jackie Chan. They did such a good job together.
The chemistry between Jaden Smith and Jennifer Connelly and also Keanu Reeves is also great.
It's also great because he's a really natural, like, empathic actor. And it's a shame that he became, like, an internet kid. Or not. Like, he's living his best life.
He's fine.
He's doing whatever he wants.
I'm not going to waste any time feeling bad for Jaden Smith. He's doing fine, and his life is going to go on regardless of whether I feel bad for him or not.
I genuinely feel like Jaden Smith's persona has really overwhelmed the fact that he was, like, really a very brilliant and natural child actor.
I agree with that.
There it is.
So they reconcile as mother and stepson, and that makes Class U go, maybe people can change. All right. I'm going to go stop Gort. So he goes out to the ship, and you can hear, by the way, they do keep Gort Klaatu Barada Nikto.
Yes, they do. Yeah,
you hear it twice in the movie.
It, yeah.
Because you hear it at the beginning when he gets shot, and it's really, like, garbled. But you can hear it. You can definitely hear it because Gort's about to attack everyone because Klaatu got shot.
We also watch everything with the subtitles on because we have a baby, so we have to keep the volume kind of low.
Yeah.
So we did. I don't think I literally would even have heard it, but it was in the subtitles.
Yeah. But then later in the movie, at the very end, he does sacrifice himself and he touches the ship and goes Klaatu, and then he dies because he gets consumed by the swarm. Right. But not so late that he couldn't stop Gort, and Gort stops. And all of the little creatures die, and it's just
everyone's fine.
There's so many of them everywhere, and the
Kathy
human
Bates
race
is fine, and the sun comes out, and everyone lives.
Yeah, and then does the ship descend up to? It ascends up to heaven
because of Jesus.
But no, but doesn't the ship leave at that point?
The ship leaves. Yeah. All the orbs pick up and leave.
Right, and so we are left with the idea that
everything's going to be okay.
Humanity's going to be okay, and we're going to change. That seems to be the message.
It's like the episode of Star Trek where Q puts humanity on trial, and Picard basically gets them like a stay of execution.
I like it. You say the episode of Star Trek.
It's the first episode of Star Trek. It's
literally the first episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation ever. So that's the movie.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what doesn't work in this movie.
Go ahead.
Where would you like to start?
I mean, the plot's a little stupid. Like, they're just like running through the woods and like this and that, and Jaden Smith's being shitty. Like, this movie really shouldn't work and probably doesn't. I don't know what it was. I wrote down character defined by action, and I think that is, I don't know what that was specifically referring to, but I think that was like the saving grace of it, is that like it really was a show not tell type of film.
We were talking about Helen Benson.
Yeah.
Because
right. I know exactly. So when she's originally taken to this like military installation with all the other scientists, they're like yelling, and there's like, it's a lot of commotion, and they're telling them, put your cell phones away. Like we're confiscating, no cell phones, no cameras. We're confiscating everything. And she takes her cell phone and like sticks it in her bra. So we know by that action that she is willing to flat the rules, essentially, for whatever reason that she has of her own. And so then like later they're having this discussion about like someone needs to
need to drug Klaatu so they can interrogate him.
And John Hamm is getting all up on his like moral high horse, and he's like, no, I won't do it, and no one on my team will do it. No one would ever do that because that goes against all the oaths that we've sworn. And Jennifer Connelly's like, I'll do it. But I think we know that because we saw her like put the cell phone in her bra, we know she's not going to do it. We know she's going to do the right thing. And she does. She like whispers to him. She like steals like saline, so it switches it with the drug. So she injects him with something with like saline, and like whispers to him like run. So he knows she's on her side. Anyway, these little actions, it doesn't have to be explained to us. So we just see it happening. And I think the movie does a good job with that. And like, it was kind of good.
Well, it's interesting because I asked you what doesn't work.
Yeah.
And then you talked about that. Can I throw out a thing that doesn't work in this movie?
Sure.
Regina Jackson, the U.S. Secretary of Defense.
Kathy Bates.
Apparently she was there for like 2 weeks. The anecdote that I read that I thought was just interesting is that apparently she was real clear with Scott Derrickson and said like, hey, don't tell me what I'm paraphrasing at this point. Don't tell me what my motivation is. If you want me to read a line a certain way, can you just act out the way you want me to do it, and I'll do that?
She's just there for the page. She's just there so she wouldn't get fined.
Like, she's just there. She's there to act. And I don't know that the problem is Kathy Bates. I think the problem is the screenplay. Nothing about this makes sense to me.
It doesn't make sense. Like
I hate this character.
The president is like AWOL because he's been taken to a secure location. And so she's like, I am the voice of the president. First of all, I don't think the Secretary of Defense is like the person that steps in if the president is in the secure location. Like, I think the president could still govern from the secure location. They just don't tell anyone where he is. So A, that doesn't make any sense. B, I just have been following politics so closely recently that I actually know what the Secretary of Defense is supposed to do, and I don't think it's this.
It felt super unreal to me.
Yeah.
Like, the thing about it is, I understand that the Secretary of Defense isn't by definition in the military, but nothing about this character rang true to me as the Secretary of Defense.
Yeah, I didn't know why she had to be the Secretary of Defense.
It did not work for me. She's there to kind of be like an antagonist, but the antagonist is not necessary. That was one of the things I like about the original is like they don't need an antagonist. The thing that is causing danger to Klaatu and our heroes is that everyone's paranoid.
Yeah.
And we as a people, we as a nation are paranoid and often do the wrong thing, which could have worked in this one too. We didn't need the figurehead telling everyone to do the wrong thing.
Yeah. I mean, the thing, like, again, I don't know if this is like, I've been following politics very closely. I don't know if this is too inside baseball, but like, if she's the one saying, I am in charge, I speak for the president, I am the president's eyes and ears, there is nothing about what this character was saying or doing that makes her need to be the Secretary of Defense. She could have been the Speaker of the House, who is third in line to the presidency, right? Like, that's actually, she could have been this like Nancy Pelosi character.
Yeah.
And I just think it's actually a real flaw. Like it just speaks to movie world or movie politics. Like, well, who would be in charge of the military? Obviously the Secretary of Defense. Well, maybe not. Like, probably not. Like, do you know what I mean?
Well, the person who would be in charge is the commander-in-chief.
Yeah.
And then it gets complicated.
And then it gets complicated.
I just feel like this is one of those places where they decided to be hand-wavy about something.
Yes,
and
yes.
They're the ones bringing it up.
Yes.
If they didn't bring it up, I wouldn't have been thinking about it. But
Yeah.
because they made such a point of bringing up the person who would be in charge, I'm going to question who would be in charge.
Yes.
And I don't want to think about that kind of stuff. I want to think about the alien.
Yeah.
Because it's an alien movie.
It makes me think of I don't know why I'm bringing up every TV show in the world. It makes me think of in The West Wing that when Jeb got shot, he's like, everything was fine. Leo was in charge. And they're like, yeah, that's the problem. Leo, who no one elected. Like, there is actually a chain of command that is supposed to kick in when the president is incapacitated.
Just
and
in
that
case there's
didn't
anyone
happen.
listening who, like me, has not seen The West Wing. I have seen it now, but I hadn't seen it when we first started doing this show. What is Leo's role?
He's the chief of staff.
Which is that person should not be in charge.
No one elected, not in the chain of command.
That's not how that works.
Yeah. Anyway.
That's like a thing that doesn't work. I think you're really right for calling out the plot. The plot just is not awesome.
It's not awesome.
My biggest problem with the movie is that, like, yeah, little things like I think John Cleese was wasted in this movie. I did not enjoy the scenes he was in.
There was no reason for him to be there.
Like, the movie does not really change based on whether that character is there. It doesn't propel the plot forward in any particular way. Just the basic premise of the movie is Klaatu needs to be convinced that humanity is capable of changing when being presented with this existential threat. And the thing that convinces him that people can change is the relationship between Helen and her son.
Yeah.
I didn't buy it at all.
Yeah.
Which
it
is
doesn't make
weird
any sense.
because I actually thought Jennifer Connelly and Jaden Smith were good, and I thought they had really good chemistry.
Yeah.
But they go from not having a good relationship to suddenly being okay, and then Klaatu is like, I guess people can change. And let me go save the world. Like, it comes out of nowhere. I thought it's not one of these things where, like, the original movie is very straightforward and very simple, but it's kind of elegant in its simplicity. This is not elegant in its simplicity. This is too simple.
It's clunky in its simplicity.
That's a great way of putting it.
Thank you, dear.
What works about this movie?
There's just these little moments that are so nice.
Yeah.
Little moments. It works on the detail. It's like a details guy. Like, it works on the detail level and not on the high level, which makes it fun to watch, but like maybe ultimately kind of unsatisfying. Can I finally talk about the cell phone situation?
If you want to talk about it, this is my favorite moment in the movie, I think.
Okay. So again, she gets to this, Helen Benson gets to this place. They're told to put their cell phones away. She does not listen. She puts it in her bra. And then we see her like sort of locked herself in a bathroom stall with this with this cell phone that she's not supposed to have. So she calls home to find out how her son is doing. And he's like, yeah, I'm great. I had dinner. Like, I'm going to go to bed. Like, I'm fine. She's like upset because she actually at this moment thinks the world is about to end. So she's like, can you just stay on the line and talk to me?
Because the ship hasn't even landed
yet.
Yeah.
Can you just talk to me for a little bit? And he's like, no, I cannot. I have to go. I am a kid and I have to do a thing. She's like, all right, I love you.
And he says, bye, Helen.
Bye, Helen. And she gets up to go to the bathroom stall, and there's this like female soldier standing there. And she says to her, is that a cell phone? Like very sternly, like, you're in trouble. I'm going to take it away from you. And Helen is like, yeah, like clearly, yes, it is. It's in my hand. And the female soldier, like this piece of acting is so good. Her face just breaks. She's like, can I borrow it? Like, she also thinks the world is ending and wants to call her family. And it's
like beautiful, empathetic filmmaking.
So beautiful. And like the acting is so beautiful. And like, you know exactly what's happening. You know exactly what's going on. It's not over explained. And I feel like in this type of movie, stuff gets over explained so often. And they just let this moment be. And it almost redeemed anything else that was like not good about this movie, because it was so good.
I do think one of the good things about this movie is it's full of human moments.
Yeah.
Like the big sci-fi doesn't always work, but the human moments work a lot.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Like all the stuff, like, oh my God, the scene when Gort finally like goes nuts and kills everybody that's in that room.
Yeah.
There's all of this kind of all these conflicts that are happening between Kyle Chandler and
like the screamy army guy that we've seen
like
now,
the military and everything, where he's basically willing to sacrifice this one dude that's in the chamber with Gort.
Yeah.
But then when it becomes clear that Gort's going to kill all of them,
he's like, let me out.
He's
and
like,
the
let me out. And the guy
no.
said, like, no, I'm not letting you out. We're all going to die right now. And it's just these really great little moments that I really, really appreciated.
Yeah.
I also loved another thing that I love, and this kind of goes along with what you're talking about, like working in the details. I loved the way that Klaatu his powers were illustrated throughout the movie, because Klaatu can do a lot of shit.
Yeah.
He's kind of like limitless power. Like, it's never fully defined what his powers are, but like his consciousness can travel through through the electrical system and the internet and stuff like that.
Sure, like you do.
And he can take over people's bodies and he can do all kinds of different things, but they never over-explain the things that they can do. They just present him in a scene where he has an objective and a motivation, and he does a thing in order to get the thing that he needs in that moment.
Yes.
And sometimes it involves like fucking people up and killing people and bringing them back to life and taking over their bodies, and I just loved it.
But
I loved
we don't
all
have
those
to have
moments.
it over-explained. Like, these are my powers, and these are the limitations of my powers, and this is what I do, and this is what I don't do. Like, he just does what's convenient for him at the moment, and it works for the character.
Yeah. And this brings me to another thing, which is, let's just talk about casting for a second.
Sure.
Keanu Reeves is perfect casting.
He's so good. Yeah, he has a very blank affect, which is perfect for this character.
It works.
It's why he's so good as Neo. Like that.
Yeah.
Like he's really good in roles that call for the thing that he does, and this is one of them.
Mm-hmm. Or Bill and Ted. He's good at that
or
too.
Or that, I guess.
He's really good at that
Jennifer
too.
Connelly is really good in this.
Can I actually talk about something related to that? So I found an interview. I'm going to link to it. There's a guy named Seth Shostak who was an astronomer and a science advisor on the movie. And I loved some of the things he talked about. He said, I'm just going to read some quotes from the interview. Among my biggest responsibilities was to advise Jennifer Connelly on believable jargon and interests for her character Helen, the astrobiologist. Connelly was, like Reeves, remarkably serious about her role, wanting to understand her real-world counterparts as well as possible. She did everything short of writing a NASA grant application, which I think is beautiful, and it makes sense given what I saw.
Yeah.
She did a really good
job.
She gave a fantastic, real, grounded performance. But one of the things I love that he wrote too, and this is one of the things I liked, is the way that scientists are portrayed in this movie. He says, my job on the film was straightforward: review the screenplay for errors in the science and coach the principals in certain technical details. I read the script several times perspectives and made suggestions both with regard to the specifics of the dialogue and the portrayal of the earthly scientists. Real scientists don't describe an object entering the solar system as, quote, notable for the fact that it was not moving in an asteroidal ellipse, but moving at nearly 3 times 10 to the 7th meters per second, end quote. More likely, they would say that there was, quote, a goddamn rock headed our way, unquote. I love that. He wrote too, this guy's funny. Real scientists might also note in passing that any object encountering the dust of the inner solar system at 0.1 times the speed of light would burn up faster than a bug in a blast furnace, but that's Klaatu's problem.
Yes.
I find this guy delightful.
Yeah.
But yes, so casting-wise, Jennifer Connelly was really good.
She was really good. And like the that scene with Professor like again, like as you say, John Cleese was totally wasted. I think I kind of see what they were trying to do. You know what it made me? Everything in this movie like makes me think of some other thing, which I think is maybe good.
Or part of the problem. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Well, you know what made me think of the scene in Children of Men where he goes to see Michael Caine.
Yeah.
You know, and then he has to like immediately run, and Michael Caine's only in that one scene, but he was there to be like this calming force. And also I think he distracted the people that were chasing.
He was more active. Like Michael Caine actually had an
active.
active role in that movie.
Yeah, like maybe if they'd given John Cleese like something to do, it would have been a little bit better.
Like John Cleese is basically there to tell Helen, you have to convince him.
Yeah.
You're the one who's going to convince him to save us all.
Yeah, which we already kind of knew.
Yeah, like what is she going to do? Is she going to say at the end of the movie when everything is fallen on her to go like, yeah, but I have no idea that I'm the person that's supposed to convince you, Klaatu, so I'm just not going to say anything because it's not my job. But no, because John Cleese told her she should do it, now she has to do it. But she doesn't even really actively do it. She just is there. Yeah.
Being the mother's love is enough to save the world.
You know, we watched it. Unfortunately, one of the things that happens is we sometimes have to watch these movies in like 2 sittings because we have a little baby and we can't always watch a whole movie in one go.
We're tired.
We watched the first hour in one sitting and then we watched the second like 30 to 45 minutes in a second sitting. And I loved the first hour and then the last half hour kind of falls apart.
It struggled a little bit, yeah.
And I didn't love it as much. But like, do you want to kind of wrap this up? Because I feel like we liked this.
We liked it. Let's wrap it up.
I liked it. I guess the last thing I'll say about it is I think one of the reasons why it wasn't received well is because, you know, everyone's comparing it to The Day the Earth Stood Still, the original one. But one of the things I think is a problem is I don't think anyone was actually comparing it to the movie. I think they were comparing it to what we view the movie as now.
Mm-hmm.
Because we in 2008 view the movie as like it is a classic of science fiction, it is a giant of the form. But like it wasn't that when it came out. When it came out, it was a simple sci-fi movie about a concept, which was what if aliens came and said they'd kill us all if we didn't stop killing each other with nuclear weapons?
Yes.
And it's kind of cheesy, and the robot effects aren't great, and the spaceship, like the interior of the spaceship looks like it's built on a sound stage where like the floor never really matches the walls in any kind of way. Like it's a cheesy sci-fi movie, and that's what it always was. It was a really straightforward sci-fi movie. So should you remake it in a way where you're trying to make the most important sci-fi movie ever made? Or should you just try to make like a fun little sci-fi movie that has some fun stuff in it, but also makes you think a little bit?
Yeah.
Because I think that's what it should be. And I think the movie succeeds in that, which to me makes it a good adaptation.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at it as they're trying to remake the greatest sci-fi movie ever made, like of course it's not going to be that, and you're going to be disappointed. You're going to give it a bad review, which it got a lot of when it came out. But like, I liked it.
Yeah. All right. Let's do some quadrants.
Okay, so 1951's The Day the Earth. We kind of talked about this already.
Yeah.
The Day the Earth Stood Still. Do you think they cared about the source material?
No, they did not give a shit. They were like, "Oh, this is an interesting premise. The first 2 pages, and we'll delete the rest of it."
We want to talk about nuclear weapons in the Cold War. We're going to do that. Was it successful?
Yeah,
hugely successful. Clearly, 2008's The Day the Earth Stood Still, and this is where it gets tricky.
Yeah.
Do you think they cared about the source material?
The short story.
I think we should judge it on whether they cared about the movie.
That's fine.
Because this is the exception that proves the rule to me.
Yeah, I mean, this has come up before.
I think they clearly cared about the original movie.
Yes, I agree with you.
I think it was a very loving adaptation of the original movie.
Yes.
Was it successful? I know how I feel about it.
Yes.
You're pausing a great long while.
I think it's on the yes. You know what? Yes, I'm gonna say yes.
I'm gonna say yes as well.
Cool.
Like we're not gonna get into whether it was hugely successful.
Yeah,
that's not how this works.
We're not even gonna get into whether it was commercially successful. I suspect the answer was no.
It was okay.
It was okay.
It did all right.
All right, fine.
You know, it was fine.
It was pretty good.
It wasn't a bomb.
I mean, here's the deal. Like I said, I hate movies like this. I hate them. I liked this. I didn't hate this movie.
Yeah, there's good stuff in it.
Cool.
Well, this has been Adapter Parish. If you'd like to find us online, we're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at AdaptCast. You can join our groups on Facebook and Goodreads, and you can also find and follow me on Letterboxd. If you have anything to say that's longer than a tweet, you can always send an email to adapterparishcast@gmail.com. If you'd like to support the show, there are 3 great ways that you can do it. First, tell a friend. Second, a rating and review on your podcast platform of choice would be greatly appreciated. Third, we are on Patreon. This show will always be free, but if you become a patron, you can get access to Adapter Parish Plus, our bonus show that releases every other week between episodes of this show, and our patron-only Slack community. It's been a lot of fun, and all the details are at patreon.com/adaptcast.
All right, let's do this. Michael Rennie was ill the day the earth stood still,
and told us where we stand. And Flash Gordon was there with silver underwear.
Claude Rains was the invisible man. Then something went wrong
with Fay Ray and King Kong. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.